Hello and welcome everybody to the S Collective podcast. My name is Gavin Duke, and today I'm here with
Silvio.
And Kelsey.
Awesome. So tell me about you guys. So what do y'all do here at the S Collective?
I run the service department.
And I help Silvio run the service department.
Perfect.
I was going to say I help Kelsey run the service department.
We both run the service department.
Perfect. So when did y'all start that up?
It was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago now.
That y'all have been doing it yourself?
Doing it ourselves. So I came from the dealership, wanted to do my own thing. So we started our own shop. I quickly realized I was not organized enough to run the office part of the shop. So I asked the most organized person I know to help me with that.
Nice. There you go. All right. So let's kind of go back to what got you into, I guess, cars and motorsports in the first place. So when was it for you that you began to find interest in racing and begin to get started in racing? I want to hear from both of y'all. So.
Well, I guess I'll start because I'm a little bit more recent. I, in college, was a competitive equestrian. And undergraduate and before, when I was younger, I rode horses competitively at the national world level. And got through college, graduated, and Mom's like, well, if you want a horse and go compete more, you can, but you got to do it with your own money. And I go, well, I don't have the money for that. I'm a broke college graduate. Yeah. So she also told me, though, she was getting to the point, she's like, I've only had SUVs my whole life, and it's been kind of boring. Like, when you have kids, you're just going to drive SUVs around, so you should get a fun sport car while you're still young. Mm-hmm. I go, okay. So I went out and bought a Ford Mustang 2015.
Solid choice.
It was what I had wanted since I was, young. When I was 16, I wanted to buy a Mustang for my first car. My parents wouldn't let me because probably not the safest first car to give your 16-year-old daughter. So I bought what I finally wanted and drove that for a bit until it broke. And the repair bill was so expensive that I was like, what do I get instead? So ultimately got the German version, the E92 M3, V8 BMW. So I got that car and was kind of fooling around on the street with some friends I had met in the car scene, going to Cars and Coffee and things like that. And I was like, man, this is really not the safest thing, but I didn't know there was any other outlet to do so. Until one day I was running an errand for my real estate business in Arlington, of all places. And I walk into the sign shop, go pick up the sign, and as I'm walking out of the store, this older gentleman pops out of the nail salon next door. And he goes, is that your BMW? And I'm like, yeah, it is my BMW. And he goes, well, I'm the treasurer of the BMW car club here in North Texas, and you should definitely come to our events. Here's my card. Here's our information. Go check out our Facebook page, our website, and we have all sorts of car events. You should totally bring your BMW. I go, okay. So I go and I look on their Facebook page, and they have something called autocross, where you go and do kind of a low-speed, safe car control class and competition as well. So I go, oh, it's like $50 to enter. That's reasonable. I can drive out for a Sunday and do that. And so I went to my first autocross about a month later. After getting my car all prepared, I read up on what to do. And went out there, had a rider sit with me and instruct me. And before I knew it, I was hooked.
There you go. That's awesome. So, it was just based on the car that you had was kind of the connection that got you there.
I tell people that all the time. Bring whatever car you have to the racetrack. If it's safe, not AKA won't roll over because it's a giant SUV, and it has tires and it has brakes, just bring it. You can drive whatever you want. I've seen all sorts of vehicles at the racetrack. You go, that guy's driving that on track? Just try it. Yeah. It'll make you a better driver on the street, even if you don't get into driving on the track for whatever reason.
That makes sense. You said you had to take classes and stuff. Is that beforehand? Was that with the club that you were with, or was that just kind of an overall, here's some training?
Not really. I researched on my own what I needed to do to get ready to go to my first autocross event. And my first track event that I went to not long after. But there's lots of guides on the internet about, hey, what do you do when you go to your first track day? Bring a bottle of water and a chair and bring a torque wrench and some light tools. So I just kind of researched those things and did it myself. And then I met more people that showed me more things. And most of these events have people on standby that can help you. When you do your first autocross, there's always people assigned to help novices. and help new people. And
That's always cool.
But for track, you did take classes.
but for track, yes, you do. When you go to a track day your first time, it's a little bit more dangerous than just racing cones in a parking lot. So at that point, they do actually, part of your entry fee provides you an instructor and classroom time to learn how to drive properly on the racetrack.
Nice.
And to be specific, autocross, the whole idea of autocross is to keep it right around 60 miles an hour, between 60, sometimes 65, and it's in a parking lot with cones, and the idea is to not hit any cones.
Okay.
So they make a little track out of it. It sounds like 60 miles an hour is not a lot because that's the highway speed that we travel at, but when you're trying to make your car fit in between tiny little space, it gets pretty difficult.
Yeah.
It gets real difficult.
Interesting.
And I think it's kind of funny that's how she got started on motorsports. It started with someone coming up to her. I think that's a lot how it used to happen a lot before, because that's how I got started too with autocross. It's I was at a gas station filling up my car, and someone came up to me and was like, "That's a really cool car," and I was like, "Thanks, man." And then like, "Have you heard about this autocross thing?" So it's kind of like the guys that come and knock on your door and ask you about. Have you heard about the Lord and Savior autocross?
That's hilarious.
And and I was like, "No, I've never heard about it. I want to try to do it." And he's like, "Well, this Saturday we have one going on." And when that was happening to me, it was in 2009, so there wasn't a lot of Facebook and social media. So it was just kind of like, show up at this airport at 6 a.m. on this Saturday, and we'll get you set up.
Nice.
But I think that's how people used to meet each other and go to the events before. It was just by approaching other people at random places.
That's cool.
But it sounds so weird to say that in 2024 of random people just coming up to you and be like, "Hey, that's a nice car. You want to come drive with us?"
Yeah, exactly.
Although mine was in 2019, so it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, not too long ago. That's cool. So was that kind of the beginning of your race career, was when you got invited to that, or had you any?
I always wanted to do it, but I just didn't know how. And then at the time, again, it was, social media wasn't as big, and finding information on how to get on track was very difficult. Like, you have to know the right places to go search. And even then, it was all complicated words, especially with someone that's never done it before, when they threw these words like HPDE, and, there's, club trials, time trials, road racing, and so you're just like, where do I go? Where do I start? And then and even finding racetracks at the time, it's like, where do I even find a racetrack? Can I just go on any racetrack? So I was fortunate enough for that person to approach me, and once. It's kind of like the gateway drug. Once once I showed up to that first event, they're like, "Oh, and by the way, if you come to this other place, you can get on the racetrack. And if you come to this other place, you can train how to go racing." And it just kind of opened up this whole world that I never knew existed.
Very cool. So tell me about this year for you guys. So what has racing or driving looked like for y'all this year? And what races have you been to? How have you done there? What have you competed in? That kind of stuff.
You want to start?
Oh my!
Since yours is a little bit.
It's been, like, if you think about the entire year, it's been a really busy, long year. We've done a lot of events. Seems like every weekend we're out doing something, either for ourselves or with the client. We do a lot of support with our clients at the racetrack, either coaching them, helping them with their cars. And then with ourselves, I have been building a car for the last 2 years. So it's been a long process with a major engine swap, mixed manufacturer. And so part of that has been, finding time in our already busy schedule to build the car. And then in the meantime...
What car is that, by the way?
It's a 2014 Scion FRS, and it has a Honda K24 swap.
Nice.
So that's been my kind of car I've wanted for a long time. This is between the two of us, a third 86 chassis car that we've owned. Yeah. When we first met, he had a blue BRZ.
Solid,
and the color was what attracted me to the car, for sure. And not the guy, sorry. The guy was a side effect. But the blue BRZ, and then he sold that car, and I bought a silver FRS. And then we sold that car because I wanted to do the K-swap that was just coming out at the time, but the silver car was a little too nice. So I found an already track prepared FRS chassis.
Can I tell a little story about the silver car?
Please.
Oh gosh.
So Kelsey had been driving this BMW for a while. It's a fast car. It's a really nice car. But from time to time, they have engine problems. And at the time, we had a lot of our friends that were having those exact engine problems, and it was about a $10,000 to $12,000 repair bill to fix it. So I kept telling Kelsey, I'm like, something lighter, cheaper will make you a better driver, because that BMW was her baby. It was
my daily driver.
It was her daily driver, but it
Yeah.
was perfect. So when she would go on track, she was always worried about taking it off track and breaking it, and so it was always
Which I had done.
so it was very important. So it was too nice, and she wanted to keep it in a bubble, but I wanted her to drive faster. So I somehow convinced her to sell the car and buy an FRS. I don't know how, but she did it after all. So she sold the car, sold it on a Friday. On Sunday, we were on our way to Houston to go pick up this FRS that we found. On the way there, we drive it. It's an FRS. It's nothing nice. It is a cheap,
Slightly modified, but it was.
It's a cheap, Japanese car. It does not compare to an M3.
Yeah.
It's pretty difficult. So we start driving back home. We stop at a gas station. She's still excited, like, oh, the car's cool, blah, blah, blah. We get home, and as we pull up home, I'm like, I walk up to the car, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I open the door. She's crying. She's crying. She's like, I miss my BMW so much right
It's
now.
so nice.
This thing is it rattles. Everything's made out of plastic. It's falling apart.
There's no creature comforts.
Yeah,
It is just a car.
Yeah, the stereo sucks. It doesn't connect to my phone. The heater doesn't have automatic. It's just like
There's
it's
manual
electric.
seats, not power seats.
So, but it just, I still just remember opening
That's
the door,
funny.
like, expecting the smiling Kelsey, and she's
yeah.
just like crying, just like, I did the wrong choice. I want my BMW back.
Some buyer's regret in there. So
Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious.
But she came to really enjoy that car. Once we modified it, it made it.
Made it yours.
Made it ours. And the goal was always, we've always loved the Caymans, right? Well, like I always say, every BMW grows up to drive a Porsche. So as soon as the BMW was gone, then the Porsche itch was coming along. And so we always kept joking that FRS was our pretend Cayman. So then we started doing
The
anything.
Porsche.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So we tried, making it nicer, and we wrapped it in a Porsche color, obviously.
Okay. Yep. Solid.
Maritime blue.
Yeah.
There you go.
And so we were pretty successful with that car for about 2 years. We put some aero on it. We did.
We did NASA time trials in TT5 where Silvio he's selling it short. He set the track record at Eagles Canyon Raceway in the class.
Nice.
And it's been standing since, I believe, 2021. So
Wow. For 3 years.
many people have tried.
Many
to get
people
that
have
record.
tried.
It's still sitting
Crazy.
Many times I've been like, today is a day that my
It's
name
going
is
down.
it's finally going, and they never get it. So it's been
awesome.
great.
there. Yep.
That's
and
cool,
then that
yeah.
car also won me my first autocross national championship.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. So that was this year, right?
Well, so my first one was actually
Right.
with that silver car
Okay.
that was wrapped in blue in 2021.
Okay.
And then I've been trying ever since to get back to another national championship. And the second year in a row in that same class, things didn't quite line up, and I lost by fraction. I'm talking maybe a couple tenths over 2 days of driving.
Dang.
And on big, long courses in Lincoln. So then the following year, we had our first Cayman finally that we had bought with the help of the business. And that car, unfortunately, decided to blow up its engine
Oh,
2 weeks
solid.
before the national championship. So there was no chance for me to compete at that point. We just borrowed some cars thanks to some friends and tried to make the most of what we had at the time. And then, so this year finally was my chance to go and try to get another championship again, since I'd failed the 2 years before, and then we had some problems the prior year. So this year I was like, well, now's my chance to go back and try. And what's fun about this particular class that I ran in this year with our current car is that my BMW, the very first autocross class that I had prepared it for, was this class called STU. So now our current car fit in that same class. I was like, well, this is
Nice.
pretty cool. I'm going to go try to win the ladies class championship in the class that when I first started autocrossing, that's where my car just happened to fall into.
Yeah.
I didn't know when I got to autocross what the classes were. Somebody told me, oh, you have these modifications, you're there, go play. Okay. Well,
right.
I don't know if I'm competitive or
Yeah.
not. I'm just going to go try it. But then I realized, well, this class is kind of fun. It kind of allows your car to be lightly track prepared and do autocross competitively. So was fun to go back kind of to my roots per se and get that championship this year.
That's awesome. Well,
And
congratulations.
and you wanted to win the STU championship in your BMW, but something got in your way, right? What was it? It was
COVID.
COVID, right? This little thing, COVID.
The
that got
little
in the way.
thing, you know, we were ready to go to the national championship in 2020 with that BMW, and then the event got entirely
Shut
canceled.
down,
Yeah.
Yeah, the world came to an end.
And then we sold the car the following year, so then we couldn't go back for STU until we finally
Till
made a
got
comeback this last year.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
your win. That's awesome. Yeah, all right. What about you? What's your story with racing?
This
Oh.
season.
Yeah.
Oh,
or
this season, I was going to say,
yeah. Yeah,
we're
yeah.
going this far back.
I know, right? Yeah.
For me, this season was I didn't really have a big direction this year. At the beginning of it, it was just kind of like, hey, we're going to go autocross. We had bought this Cayman. Initially, we bought the Cayman to turn it into a track car. But since our autocross car blew up, I was forced to turn it into an autocross
You can tell I
car.
really like autocross.
I really like the racetrack. I mean, I like autocross too. I don't want to stop doing either. But I would say
Your preference.
my preference is like 60% track, 40% autocross. Well, I think she would probably be like 60% autocross, 40% track.
Yeah. I've skipped many a track event to go to bigger autocross events.
That's funny.
And I'll skip any autocross to go to a track day.
That's funny.
But I started realizing that the Cayman would also fit pretty well into a time trial class. So we kind of tried doing the dual duty thing, and I started running the Cayman in time trials this year, which was pretty successful. Locally, we essentially, out of how many rounds is there locally? I would say
I believe there's 9 rounds.
9 rounds locally, and I reset the track record at 6 of those. And
2 you weren't able to attend.
2 of them I was not able to attend.
That's funny.
I also won every one that I entered, with the exception of one day, which I got a little cocky and thought I didn't need a lot of practice, and I didn't think I needed new tires either. And I was like, "Oh, I got this." I did not have this.
It happens.
So that got me. So that was a
A mid-season learning lesson.
mid-season learning lesson. But I came back and won the rest of the events. I've also entered another local series called Apex Lap Attack. Also won every event that I entered. The one time I was not able to make it, she drove the car at the event and won.
Yeah.
So our little Cayman has been doing pretty well this year.
That's awesome.
For not being, and I guess I'll even add another layer to it, this Cayman is not the correct Cayman. It was just the Cayman that we could afford.
Yeah.
They make base model Caymans, they make S models, and they make GT4s and on and on. This is the base model.
Of the first generation of Cayman.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in our class, the S model lives in the same class.
Okay.
The difference in between our car and the S model is 50 to 60 horsepower. Everything else is
Wow.
about the same,
Okay.
but with more. The other car has
Yeah.
more power. So
I'm
we've
sure
been-
that's pretty obvious when you're on the track, or especially straights.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can
It is.
feel the gap.
It is very obvious, and but luckily enough, we were able to get it all done with 50 horsepower less than everybody else,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
including went to time trial nationals with the car. There, unfortunately, I was not able to win. I got second place at it.
Yeah, that's not bad,
But
though.
again, being down 50, 60 horsepower to the
Yeah.
competition did not help.
Hey,
And
that's
it's your first time at that track.
It's
Yeah,
my first time at that track as well.
learning. Yeah, that's cool.
I also raced the Spec Miata, although this year with essentially clients and events and the shop growing, I was not able to really race it that much. I did 2 races, maybe 3 races through the year. But that class it's tough out there.
Yeah. It looks
it's-
like utter mayhem with everybody. Out
It is
there.
mayhem, and in Texas we have one of the best prep shops in the nation that builds Spec Miatas. So that makes it so our region has very, very, very well prepared cars with very fast drivers.
Interesting.
So it's essentially every regional event here is like a national event. It's
Okay.
it
Just
is
with less cars.
Yeah.
with less cars. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So there I'm a solid mid pack.
But the other car, also the white car, golf ball, we affectionately call it because it's hail damaged and it's white. But that car also helped me this season at time trials because my KFRS wasn't really done being built, and I wanted to drive it all year. Never really got to, but it kind of roughly slots into one of the classes at NASA time trial. So I was able to utilize that car
Nice.
a little bit this year while my FRS was getting done. And it helped me get some points here or there, get a win or two. And ultimately, when I finally got to drive the FRS at the end of this season, it helped me win a season championship.
Nice.
In NASA and TT4.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
it's kind of your in between.
So what I would say to everybody is, what we're trying to say here is get yourself a Cayman, because it will do everything you want it to do. This year, it competed in SCCA time trials. It competed in SCCA autocross, won a championship there, won a championship locally. It competed in NASA time trials and every other track day that you can think of.
That's awesome.
Without breaking.
Hey, that's solid. So is that your reasoning for like why Porsche? Is that why you go for that? Just the
Well, Porsche started for me early on, believe it or not. Just as a kid, I always had posters of Porsches growing up. But when I was a kid, for some reason, I really liked red brakes. And I didn't know anything about cars. You know, as a 6-7-year-old, like I didn't know much about it. I just knew I liked cars. But every time I saw red brakes, I was like, those are cool.
Yeah.
And guess what? Porsches have a lot of red brakes. So that brand always kind of stood out to me as a kid. So then as I started growing up more and learning more about cars, I started looking into racing. And if you start looking at the history of racing, it's Porsches in it a lot. And so then I started putting 2 and 2 together. I'm like, these must be good at the track.
Yeah. I've seen that one ad that they had where it was like nobody's perfect and they have 9 of the 10 top spots.
I have that
was
on a
like-
t-shirt.
Yeah,
that's
that's like
pretty awesome.
It was like
man.
the 1982
Yeah.
Le Mans, where they essentially, So that's kind of where I started learning more and more, because I love the history of racing. So I read a lot about those races, and I'm like, Porsche's doing something right.
Yeah.
So then I went to trade school, and when I went to trade school, I took a Porsche apprenticeship program. So I started learning more about how the cars were built. I realized that the cars look simple from the outside. But the engineering that goes into these cars, it's all about the little details that no one else knows about.
Yeah.
And when you buy a Porsche, there's hundreds and hundreds of details that you'll never even know that they put into it to make it a better track car, to make it a better car.
That's cool.
And that's what makes them unbreakable. As you start driving cars faster and faster on track, they tend to fall apart. And basically, at this point, you give me pretty much any stock car, and if I go on track, I will overheat it in about a couple of laps, except Porsches. I can get into a stock 911 and go do 30 minutes straight on it, and it will be fine.
Wow.
Even with stock brakes, even with stock fluids,
Wow.
it will still make it. I can do that with other manufacturers.
So it's born to be a race car.
It's born to be a race
That's
car, and it's
awesome.
engineered to be a race car.
That's very cool. This is a question from somebody else in the shop, but it's, why do Porsche people like Michelin so much?
I think it has to do with that it's one of the best tires they make. I'm just joking. No questions. Okay, it's just the best tire. No, I'm kidding. It's an OEM tire. The thing is that Michelin makes a very good, street tire. The Pilot 4S. It's great in the rain. You can essentially take it on track if you wanted to get around. It wears really well. It's quiet. So it's kind of like an all-around tire, and they come as an OEM tire. So that's why
That's probably
everybody's
why
got
everybody.
Yeah, but as far as
Makes
like when we get to more serious track stuff, we kind of start getting away from the Michelin.
More performance type.
Mostly
more
because they don't really make anything below that 300 treadwear tire.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
Makes sense.
They kind of go straight for the Cup 2, and the Cup 2 is not. In today's market, we have what we call the Super 200s. The Super 200s, which is a 200 treadwear tire, it's been a tire war that's been going on for about 10 years now, maybe.
Whenever SCCA Autocross switched from, they used to require our compounds or Hoosier tires. So basically like a racing slick that has a DOT. So you could drive on the street, but it doesn't have any way to really avoid water. So people were driving on these types of tires to events. They're really expensive. So SCCA changed and said, hey, let's make this sport more affordable for people and have tires you can drive to the events on safely if it is a rainstorm. And they put in this kind of, I don't know if it was arbitrary, I'd have to look more into the history of that, but they put in the 200 treadwear limit. So you have to have a minimum 200 treadwear tire to compete in most of the autocross classes. There are still classes if you want to run a race-oriented tire, but the majority of their lower level street type classes where your car is going to be more stock or very lightly modified, those classes require a 200 treadwear or higher tire. And so with that, it's kind of created this place in the market for manufacturers to go, hey, let's build a tire to these rules. And then over time now, other people that go to track days as well, it's kind of the same idea. You want to drive your car to the track. Not everyone can afford a truck and a trailer and all the things that go with that, storage. So having a 200 treadwear tire, once you become a little bit more of an advanced or intermediate driver, really helps you. You can go to the track, but still put down a faster lap time and kind of get a little bit more heat tolerance and things that your streetable Pilot Sport 4S, still a great tire. Don't get me wrong. One of my favorite all-around tires. But if you want that next level, then you jump into the 200 treadwear.
It's kind of become the gold standard, right? So like if you're going to start doing track days or anything, when anybody says street tire for the track, they always mean 200 treadwear. And, and as racers are going to be racers, the idea was to keep costs down and, keep the speeds a little bit lower over a Hoosier. Well, 10 years later, the Super 200 tires are within a tenth maybe, or just they're very, very close to a Hoosier now.
Really?
But the only difference is that they wear out faster than a Hoosier and they don't maintain that grip at the same level of the Hoosier. So essentially we've given ourselves a worse tire than the Hoosier for about the same price of a Hoosier nowadays.
That's funny.
So it's kind of evolved into this whole, it's cool because now we get some really cool tires that we can drive to and from the racetrack. So it's given ability to a lot of people to just access these fast tires now.
Yeah.
And access the racetrack, which is fun to see.
That is cool.
Really, the track scene has grown so much, even just in the last 5 years that I've been at this.
Yeah, that's cool. What's that been like for y'all to see that kind of grow up with the times?
I love it because it gives me more access to it, and it gives everybody more access to it. It's really been it's been crazy how much has grown. I mean, we have new racetracks popping up everywhere, and that's a huge investment to make. And
millions and millions of dollars
and
to build a new racetrack. And we've had in just North America, or even really just here in the U.S., probably 4 or 5 brand new racetracks that I'm aware of in the last 4 to 5 years.
That's a really short
incredible.
time frame. Yeah.
Essentially, we're getting about a new track once a year.
Every year.
Which is it's just insane. And most of these tracks are starting to come up with this. They all have, they want to make them country clubs, so they want to make it a membership base for them. And that's what they're all doing. So it's giving access to everybody. Before, like when these country club type tracks started, it was like, oh, you need a $250,000, sign up, and then,
It's extremely exclusive.
Yeah. And now, it's like we have tracks like Eagles Canyon where you can become a member for $10,000 and your monthly payment is,
a few hundred bucks.
A few $100. And so anybody can access that
That's
now,
cool. Yeah.
which is, it's really cool. So everybody sign up to go to Eagles Canyon.
There you go. That's the place to be.
Not a sponsor, by the way.
Cool. All right. Finally, let's talk about the story of y'all. So how did y'all meet? What's it like working together? Just tell me the story of y'all's relationship.
It was a very random story that was has a little bit of stubbornness and a blue car.
Yeah, so I mentioned his blue BRZ earlier, his really pretty hyper blue BRZ. So he had taken it to a BMW club event at Hallett, which is in Oklahoma. It's about 45 minutes west of Tulsa. Great little family-owned racetrack. So I went because obviously it was a BMW CCA day, and I had my BMW. And so I took the truck up there to go drive on this new racetrack. I thought it would be really fun. And I got up there on Friday, which was early. The HPD and instruction group didn't really start for us as novices until Saturday and Sunday. Okay. But Friday they had an extra day where all of the instructors could come drive, and anyone that was a solo certified driver could drive. I was not yet solo certified at the time, but I still went on Friday because I figured, well, I'll probably find one of my instructor friends that I've met throughout the year that I can ride with, because instructors can take passengers.
Okay.
And then maybe I can learn something before I go on the track myself, since I've never been to this track before. So that's kind of how I ended up going to this track on Friday early. And then Silvio went early because he was an instructor.
Well, and I became an instructor for the BMW club because when I first moved to Texas, I went to a SCCA autocross. So that's kind of, I moved to a few cities because of work and stuff, and that's always been how I find people, find new friends. Is I just sign up to go to an autocross, and there's plenty of likable people. Yeah. And at one of those
like-minded people.
Yeah, like-minded people. And at one of these events, I met this gentleman, and he's like, "Oh, I am the chair of the driving events for BMW, and we're looking for instructors. Are you an instructor?" When I was in California, I became a national certified PCA, Porsche Club of America driving instructor. So I told him that, and he's like, well, if you come to our events, you get to drive, we at no cost. You just have to instruct. And I'm like, I'm in.
Nice.
And I heard great things about this track in Oklahoma called Hallett, and they were doing an event there. So I went, Doug, I'm going to sign up as an instructor. And he's like, all right. And if you want, you can do the extra day. So I'm like, on my way.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so I made it out there. And the thing with BMW Club is that they give you assigned numbers.
Which is nice because they give you a pre-printed decal you can stick on your car. You don't have to go worry about like buying magnets or buying vinyl or whatever. They just have all the vinyl pre-printed and assigned to all the drivers.
Nice.
So it's actually kind of a benefit of what you spend on your track day for them to provide this to you. Because most times you have to buy it yourself or bring it yourself.
Makes the cars look nicer, so it's not blue tape or something like that. But it just happened that I've been using the same number since 2009, and it's always been my kind of lucky number, you can say it. And they assigned me some random number, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to just put my number. I tend to do this often where I'm just like, whatever. I'm going to do my own thing anyways. So,
rules out the window.
So I'm like, no, I'm going to run my number 40. So I didn't even know what number I was assigned. I just put the number 40 on the side of my car. I'm going to drive until someone says otherwise.
That's funny.
So that's what I did. But I showed up early to this event. And again, I'm still, I think I've been in Dallas for about 8 months, maybe still under a year. And so I'm still meeting new people. And I just kind of happened to look over, and there's this gentleman working on his BMW, again, at prep for the track day. But the interesting thing about him is that he was doing like an alignment on the paddock. And so he essentially drives the car there, changes brake pads, changes the alignment, and then goes on track. And at the end of the weekend, he puts his stock brakes back on, changes his alignment back to street, and then drives it home.
Interesting.
So I thought that was, I changed my brake pads and changed my tires, but the alignment, I was like, whoa, like this is a lot.
Serious, yeah.
So then I come up to him and I'm like, hey man, did I just see you changing your alignment from over there? And he's like, oh yeah. And he tells me this whole technique that he's got it. So I start talking with him, and cool dude. So we get along.
I also know this guy because he's one of the instructors, and he has the same type of car as me, an E92 M3.
Okay.
So I actually, that Friday, when Silvio was meeting him about the alignment separately, I had asked him, hey, can I ride with you some today so I can learn the track? So absolutely, I got to ride with him. Learn that he had instructed me before. He wasn't my assigned instructor that weekend, but we already had a little bit of a relationship. So
it didn't matter. Yeah.
It didn't matter. I just hopped in his car, rode along, and learned the track. While Silvio was over there at a separate point of the day talking to him about his track
funny.
preparations.
Yeah.
So then, one thing led to another, and I forgot how we started talking.
Well, because I had already had the idea in my mind that I kind of wanted one of those 86s, because another friend of mine and I had been talking a lot about like the cost of driving these BMWs and how they're heavy. They have big, wide, expensive tires. Again, I've graduated college. I'm getting going in my career. I'm making good money, but I'm not like making a lot of money. So every dollar you spend on a track day for fun is still a strain on your bank account. And I was like, well, especially the looming thought again of a $10,000 S65 engine kind of out there. So even though I was maintaining my car well, I was like, well, what if the engine blows up? That would really suck. Like, it's just, it's going to happen one of these days.
Yeah.
It's not an if, it's really a when, So I started thinking like, okay, what alternative cars? And the 86 was kind of already on my mind as like a more affordable car I could drive. It wasn't like set, but I was interested in the car. And I saw his blue car. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool car. So I went over and talked to him about the car. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe buying one of these in the next couple of years, trying to figure out what is about these cars is great. So maybe I can ride in your car too, since you're an instructor.
Yeah.
And
of course, I was like, yes, you can definitely ride in my car.
That's funny.
and even a little backstory even further, because this was my second BMW event. The first BMW event that I went, I had just a random assignment student. But I remember, I just kind of remember seeing her walking around. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty girl. And she's driving a car. So I remember going to the CDI, to the chief driving instructor, and being like, next time, you make sure I get the cute girl as my student. From here on out, I don't want any dude.
Funny.
I don't want any old guy. That's what I want as a student.
Funny. Yeah.
So I kind of had already. I saw her, but I didn't. I was so busy that day, I didn't really get to introduce myself.
Well, ladies at the racetrack are a pretty rare sight
I'm
as
sure,
it is.
yeah.
And she was already surrounded by this other like whole crowd of dudes. So I was like, it's gonna be it's an impenetrable wall. You know, I can't get through that.
Exactly.
So that's
You didn't have to.
They didn't have
She
to.
came
So
up to
then,
you?
so when she came up to me and was like, "Hey, can I ride in your car?"
It's like, heck
And I was
man.
like, yeah, for sure. I think I might have even offered it. I was like, I think you were
Yeah.
saying like, I want ride-alongs, and I'm like, come ride with me. So of
That's
course
funny.
I went out there and did the best driving you can ever imagine. Set the fastest lap. No, I'm just kidding. But I tried doing some of my best driving, and you know we got talking. We met each other. I think we went out.
We went to dinner with a big group of people on that Saturday night.
Very
We talked for a little bit and stuff, but just in the hecticness of the track day, we didn't really. I think we exchanged numbers and stuff, but it wasn't.
I don't remember. I
Yeah.
think maybe just like added you on Facebook or
Yeah,
something.
so it was something light, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's kind of how that happened, right? But
Then we went off on the weekend and went our separate ways.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of we both arrived at the track by ourselves and left by ourselves. It's kind of happened to me.
yeah. And so then I get back home, and I think it was a couple of days later, and I get a message on Facebook.
Maybe
and
about a
she's-
week.
About a week, and then she goes, "Oh, you tell it."
Yeah, so about a week after the event. So again, I'm new to track driving. I love track driving. One of the things that's kind of fun about track driving is that most organizations that do performance events, they have photographers. And so there's usually one photographer that's kind of the main person for that event, and they'll offer photo packages. So I personally love that to kind of see how over the years, now that I've been doing this for so long, how I've progressed, the different cars
Yeah.
I'm driving, the level of prep, you know, tracks I've been to, things like that. So I always buy my photo
That's cool,
packages.
yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
And so that particular event, I had ordered my photo package because it's my first time going to this new racetrack. And I got the photo package in the following week. And I look and I'm like, well, that's weird. Why do I have all these pictures of this dang blue car? Well, because the BMW club had assigned me, when I checked in and followed the instructions, the car number 40,
Oh.
which is Silvio's number.
Wow.
So I had all these pictures of
When you-
Silvio's car
When you buy
That's
pictures, that's how the
hilarious.
photographer knows.
Yeah.
based on the car
Based on
number
the car
and
number.
the car color or model.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's
That's
like,
crazy.
She's like, hey, do you want some of these pictures that they sent me? Because they're all your car, and
That's
also,
hilarious.
why the hell were you using 40?
Because everyone at BMW, like most every track event, like the organizers want no one to have the same
Yeah,
number because it's
yeah.
also a safety factor of the corner workers have to call in car number 40 went off track at turn 5, like who it was.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that way the person at the black flag station can black flag you and go, hey, no, you did a bad thing. Come in and get your car checked
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Because if there's 5 cars in number 40, well, how are they going to know which car went off track?
Exactly.
Well, I
That's
guess they
fun.
never noticed that I had number 40. I
apparently
must have not
so.
gotten any black flags
Well,
that
Cool,
weekend.
though.
we also weren't in the same group, which
Okay.
helped a little.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, so then she's like, you want these pictures? And I was like, yeah, sure. But why don't we go out on a date, you know?
Yeah.
That's
I was like,
hilarious.
screw the pictures. You
Yeah.
know, this is my moment.
That's very cool.
And then she agreed to go on a date with me. And then
And I was like, well, you know, like, he was pretty cool. I didn't really know him that well. Like, he works at the car dealership. I don't know. But, like, I'll just make it like a low commitment date. So I lived in the middle of uptown Dallas at the time in a little condo. And there's a lot of bars and restaurants that were walking distance from my place. So I picked a place that I knew was like 400-foot walk from my house.
and you
So-
know the bartender.
and I knew the bartender. So I was like, I don't really know this guy.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
met him like very briefly
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
racetrack one weekend. Like he seemed pretty cool, but let me just pick a place where, okay,
Yeah.
if things don't go well, I can get home easily.
Exactly.
And I know the staff at the bar, so I feel comfortable. That's kind of usually my MO with dates at the time. And so we go to this bar and we start hanging out and we get talking and all of a sudden by the way, it's the night before Thanksgiving, so drinking is, you know, not too bad of a thing when you have to deal with your family for the whole next day.
Yeah. That's funny.
So we sit there and start drinking and talking and drinking.
This is pretty early too. I think
we
met
got
at
there maybe like 7:30. Like I figured like, oh, we're just gonna have a date and then I'll probably go somewhere else afterwards and meet up with some of my friends or something.
Next thing we know, the bar's like, hey guys, it's last call.
Wow.
And we're like, what? We got here so early. Like how? We've just been talking without even noticing. I mean, we were just in our own world together. And
that's kind of how it went.
The rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the lesson here is go to a track day early and use whatever number you want. No, I'm kidding.
Be stubborn. Keep your number. Till today, I still use that number.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lucky number 40, man.
It's actually on the side of that car right there, right now.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. All righty. Well, that is all the time that we have today. Thank y'all for joining me. And thank y'all for listening. Be sure to stay tuned for next week's episode as well. But yeah, thank y'all for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.